Hello there, welcome back. It's great to have your company. It's coming up to 11:30. We're almost halfway through the show, but it's been a really lively one so far. And indeed, if you missed the debate that Andrew Eborn and I had with Monica, the lawyer, previously, it's actually on talkTV's Twitter, so you can watch a little bit of that if you want to, or you can go back after the programme and watch that as well, because it really was quite an interesting debate. She was saying that she, as a lawyer, will not be prosecuting anybody who is eco-protesting, and it was just a very, very interesting debate, and I think it's something I disagree with. I think that everybody should be prosecuted if they break the law. Well, if the burden of proof is high enough for them to be prosecuted, but it was just kind of an interesting debate, and we've had loads and loads of reaction as well, and we're going to have another debate now because we're talking about universities. But just before we do, let's have a university degree, so let's just read a couple more messages. Paul in the World says, "Hi Peter, university is just a work permit and designed to get young people into debt," says Paul. We talked about Macron's watch a minute ago. John from Chingford says it's irrelevant how much Macron's watch is worth because, like every leader, he probably didn't pay for it. Oh goodness. Well, we don't know that, but nonetheless, thank you to John from Chingford. I mentioned the front page of the Daily Star, which is a classic front page after Boris Johnson's evidence to the House of Commons Privileges Committee the other day, which had him as Pinocchio. Of course, he would deny that he lied at all. That was the whole point of the exercise, actually, but the Daily Star thought otherwise and simply had him with a big, long Pinocchio nose and dressed as Vicky Pollard, the Little Britain character. Is his Little Britain, isn't it? And it just had yeah, but no, but yeah, but no but on the front page. So we have a texter who says, on Wednesday with Boris, he did remind me of Vicky Pollard as well, so thank you for that. Claire says, "My construction degree tripled the wages I earn, but there is massive disparity in pension contributions between the public and private sector. I get 6%. Claire, that is absolutely true. Leslie says, "How much of student loans are actually repaid, especially the ridiculous Mickey Mouse courses," says Leslie. That's a really interesting one, actually, because you do need to earn a certain amount of money to start paying back. Robin says, "Very few people are living longer, so raising the pension aid, the Conservatives' agenda for screwing us again and making our lives a misery for their own ends." Well, it all comes into employment, it all comes into how we enter the workforce, and I think it's interesting because the labour force is changing, and of course artificial intelligence is taking over some roles. University fees and costs are increasing, not least rent at many universities as well, to say nothing of the sometimes eye-watering fees. I remember the massive disgruntlement when I went to university that there were fees being charged, and I think my fees were £1,075 a year. And I say that to some university students. I taught some university students a few weeks ago, actually, at City University in London on the journalism course. I just did a bit of teaching there. And they were, I mean, their fees are crazy. They're very, very high fees indeed. So having a degree these days, is it good value in the long term? Does it actually, does it prepare you for the world of work in a different way? Or maybe the University of Life is the way forward. Well, Estefany Solorzano is a social media officer at the University of East London, and she is joining us, as is Matt Haycox, who is an entrepreneur and investor. You're both very welcome to talkTV this afternoon. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Very good. Thanks for having me.
Great. Stephanie, maybe I could start with you. You did a degree and it really changed things for you. What do you think is the value of university?
For me, going to university was an investment in myself. So a little background for me, I moved from Cuba to the UK when I was 6 years old.
From Cuba?
Yes, from Cuba. So I'm the first person in my family to kind of go through school and to university in the UK. And unfortunately, I didn't have kind of a professional network that I could kind of leverage. And after high school, I went back to Cuba for a few months, so I didn't actually finish college. And the University of East London, for me, as a higher education access university, allowed me to kind of go to university without having those formal qualifications and access a professional network that kind of has got me to where I am today. So,
and what do you do now? Tell us about your job now, because you work for the University of East London.
I do, yes. I graduated in June 2021, and I started working for the university in July of that same year as a clearing kind of recruitment assistant for students. And then that kind of progressed into a social media executive role. Within 3 months, I was then offered a permanent position as a social media officer, which I started in last year, January. And about 9 months into my role, I was then offered a secondment to work at the Mayor's office, Mayor of London's office, which I did a 6 month secondment in, and I just got back from this month.
Wow.
So yeah,
You've had a varied career so far, and you're clearly someone who makes an impression, has been promoted many, many times. But how much do you think a university education was actually part of that? Because you sound like someone who would do well in the workplace anyway. You're someone who is bright and people want to do well. I mean, how much is a degree actually part of that?
Yeah. So my degree was it was absolutely necessary.
What was it in?
Sorry?
What was your degree in? What was the subject?
So it was business management, specialising in marketing. A lot of the things that I learned within my degree have helped me to this day, but also the kind of network that I was able to build at university as well. So I did actually work. Prior to going to university, I worked for companies like EasyJet and TfL, but mainly within customer service roles. And I felt that for me, I just realised I didn't have an interest in being like a retail manager, and I needed to kind of develop some more specialist knowledge, which I felt a degree would be able to, it was kind of a broad enough sort of way of learning for me. But I needed an ecosystem in which I could actually spend time kind of mapping out my future, and I needed resources and a network of people that could kind of help me to navigate that professional world where I didn't have parents, siblings, aunties, uncles that could kind of guide me through. So it was absolutely necessary to go to university.
Okay, well, Estefany, that sounds really interesting, because you've clearly you've thought about this a lot, and clearly you're a young woman who's been promoted many times already in your career. You're doing really, really well. Matt Haycox is with us. He's an entrepreneur and investor. University has clearly worked for Estefany. It has helped her in many ways. But is it something that you would recommend, Matt?
I think for me, and I guess just to give a bit of context to me as well.
Yeah, tell us about you.
I mean, I actually did go to university, but only for 6 weeks. I dropped out, and I guess I dropped out because I never really wanted to go in the first place. I mean, as much as I'm sure no one thinks I look it, I'm in the over 40 category, and I think anyone who was kind of growing up in the 80s, 90s. I mean, we very much came from an era where you had to go to uni. I mean, it was also very, very much, if you didn't go to university back then, you were a failure to yourself.
Yeah.
You were a disappointment.
Which I think is a load of rubbish, actually, because you look at the people who make, even take the American example of respect or prestige for money in a way that we don't quite have. We're still a bit sniffy about some people in our economy now. I mean, my plumber makes a lot more money than I do.
Yeah, and I mean, I went to university under pressure from my parents. I mean, I'd known from 13 or 14 that I wanted to be in business. I didn't particularly know what in business I was going to do, but I just knew I was hungry to get out there and make money. And it wasn't that I was hating on uni. I just felt that for me, it was going to slow me down 3 or 4 years of getting to where I wanted to go. I went under sufferance from my parents, but I kind of tried to work at the same time, and it got to the point where I was not going to be able to work and do uni. So I kind of convinced my parents to let me leave, and I said, look, I'm going to have a year of working. If it works out, then I can stay and not go to uni. But if it fails, then I go back to uni next September, and consider it a year out. And I still kind of joke that 23 years on, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I'm not going to have to enroll as a mature student next September.
And Matt, you're an investor. I wonder if we can talk about this from an return on investment kind of idea, because it's clearly worked out for Estefany, but there must be lots of people who pay their £9,000 in fees, £9,000, and that's before you get into accommodation and food and all the other things you need, books and all the rest of the things you need to buy. I mean, are people getting bang for their buck, do you think, in terms of going to university? Some people will, but some people won't.
And for me, you say return on investment, and that is exactly how I think you should be looking at it. I don't disagree with the concept of university. I think it's important to know, where do you want to end up? Yeah. If you want to end up as a doctor, as a dentist, as a lawyer, then it goes without saying that university is the only path.
Yeah. Yes, I want my doctor to have gone to university.
but if you want to end up in other career paths, whether that's media or business entrepreneurs.
Well, media. Sorry to interrupt you, Matt, but I just must make this point: the 2 best journalists I have ever worked with, right? Guy called David Blevins, he's the senior Ireland correspondent for Sky News, and a woman called Yvette Shapiro, who's been a mentor to me for many, many years. 2 brilliant journalists. Neither of them went to university because they didn't need to, and they, it didn't stop them being fantastic journalists.
Yeah, I think you've got to decide where do you want to end up, and what is the best route to get there. You know, what is the most most cost effective. You know, what is the opportunity cost? And like I said, I'm not saying that university is definitely the wrong way. I'm just saying that we have to look at it from a mathematical, from a logistical perspective. You know, not the emotional perspective that I was brought up in. And as Estefany says, you know, she come to the UK. She didn't have contacts. You know, she didn't know people, etc., etc. And if that's the way that, you know, she felt that was going to work,
yeah, well,
for her,
it's clearly helped open a lot of doors for you, Estefany. It clearly has been about more than just what you learned. Tell us more about that, Estefany.
Absolutely. I mean, prior to kind of starting university, I lived outside of London. I wanted to move into London. I lived in Sussex. I felt like, you know, I wanted to come into, you know, the city and have a more dynamic experience. So the University of East London had a campus, you know, kind of centrally located in London. So it helped me to move into London. I was able to just access all of the kind of services within the university, and it really just helped me to kind of literally map out everything that I wanted to do.
What about the money side though, Estefany? I mean, it's so expensive for so many people, and I don't know how much of your student loan you've paid off, or whether it's some people say, you know, the interest often overtakes it and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, just paying off that loan, that's a big thing to go into the workplace with. And some people might say, well, actually, if I do an apprenticeship or I go and work for a business that's going to train me or even pay for my university education, if I do it sort of part-time, which happens in some ways. I mean, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of debt going into the workplace, especially in a cost of living crisis.
I think it ultimately is, again, I see it as an investment. For me, it completely changed my life. I would do it all over again if I had to, if I needed to. I actually gained from that experience. My student finance loan was allowed me to work part-time. I actually worked 3 days a week throughout my degree in a fintech bank, alongside, you know, studying, and I graduated with a first-class degree. So yeah, it just gave me the time and resources that I needed to kind of map out my future, because I didn't have a plan and I needed time, I needed the resource. So to me, actually, the money was incredibly helpful. And I know that in my lifetime, I want to earn more than just kind of what I would pay back in student loan. So I'm a very ambitious person. That doesn't necessarily scare me, because obviously I want to earn more than, you know, what, 60,
of course,
70.
Of course. But do you think being able to work a few days and actually having that almost sort of hybrid work and studying thing actually was the key to your degree, was actually made it work well? Because, you know, university is changing. It's not just sitting in the library the whole time, as I absolutely didn't do, but was meant to.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of kind of like practical experience, the University of East London offers a lot. I mean, I'm not a legal student, but we have something called the Legal Advice Centre, which is a place where kind of law students can, under kind of supervision of provision of solicitors, can give kind of legal advice to communities. So they're getting practical experience alongside their degree. And we have a tax accountancy clinic which operates in very much the same way. We have a freelance marketplace where employees can connect with freelance students. There's a lot of ways that you can kind of gain.
Seems like it's diverse, and it's adapting an awful lot. Matt, just a final word from you about the University of Life and your own journey. I mean, you've made a very, very successful career without a university education. And if there are people who are maybe going into exams at the moment, coming up, revising at the moment, and thinking about those exams, if their A-levels maybe don't go quite as well as they want to, or maybe other exams, T-levels or other courses they're doing don't go quite as well, and they maybe don't get the university course they want, what would you say to those people, Matt?
Well, my advice to those people would be that there are other options. And, you know, I've been successful not because I didn't go to university. I just chose not to go to university because I knew there were other options. As much as I think there's other options for university, what I don't think there are other options for are for education. I mean, I'm absolutely pro education, whether you're 18, whether you're 22, whether I'm 42, reading books every day now. I love to learn. And the reason I've been successful is because, you know, I've decided what I wanted, and I've fought to get it, and I've continued to learn along the way. And that's my advice to anyone, whether you're 16, 18 or 20 or 26, 62. You know, it's never too old, you know, to do anything. And as you know, as long as you can set a goal and can kind of reverse engineer a path from there of how you're going to get there, you know,
big thumbs up from Estefany there.
Absolutely, because I can co-sign everything that you just said, and
Brilliant.
I think it's very much the same.
Well, two pretty inspiring people who've done very well for themselves in life and will continue to. Thank you both very much indeed, Estefany Solorzano. So, by the way, Cuba is a beautiful country. I went there. We can have a debate about how it's run, but I absolutely love Cuba. It's a beautiful country. Estefany Solorzano is a social media officer at the University of East London, and Matt Haycock's there, who's an entrepreneur and investor.